Hi everybody, today is August 10th, 2026, and I've been posting these videos for 2 years as a form of therapy in my recovery from the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Cairns, 64, with Down syndrome, be locked away by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government, David Eby as leader, Nikki Sharma as Attorney General, and Jill Malcolmson as the cabinet minister responsible for Paul's care. So they locked Paul away after I complained to the police when I discovered a secret and what I alleged to be a fraudulent and forged power of attorney the government created, appointing my then 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario as Paul's guardian, giving away all of his rights to her so that they could give him the COVID-19 shot with no liability. They did that on February 6th of 2021, but I didn't find out about it for a year. When I complained to the police, the group home terminated my visits with my brother. I had an agreement with the government that I could visit with him twice a week, once at the group home and once at my home. And the lawyer wrote me and said I would never see my brother again. I did everything I could, used every penny I had or could borrow to try and reinstate his visits, but I wasn't successful. And then on April 15th of 2024, I got a phone call from the nun's Vancouver lawyer. She had 2 law firms working for her around the clock. I estimate that the Catholic Church spent more than $2 million on her legal representation to uphold the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. But I got a call from the Vancouver lawyer, Casey Deanshaw, saying that my brother Paul had had a stroke and that he was at Burnaby Hospital and I could arrange a visit through him. I dropped everything and I went to Burnaby Hospital. Paul was there for 10 days before I believed that they killed him. I believed that the nun, when she could see that Paul wasn't going to die, he was recovering very well. He sat up, he grabbed a book from my hand, he turned the pages perfectly. But when the nun could see that she was going to be investigated, I got a phone call from the Burnaby RCMP saying that they had been ordered by their Ottawa oversight agency to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. When she found out they had called me, then I knew that Paul had to die. She ordered the treating doctor, Michael Baker, to withdraw all of Paul's medical supports, his ventilator, his oxygen mask, and he sedated Paul to death. Paul struggled so hard to recover. He loved life. After Paul was killed, they never told me if there was a funeral or what happened to his remains. I complained to the coroner, but they said they couldn't do anything because the Dr. Michael Baker had signed off on the cause of death. But after Paul died, then the nun went after me. She flew into Vancouver again and stayed here for a 4-day hearing to have me designated permanently as a vexatious litigant. It's a very rare and unusual designation that removes all of my access to Canadian courts, except for the federal courts and the Supreme Court of Canada. So I believe she did that so I couldn't sue her for wrongful death, because I could see that Paul had been murdered right in front of me. When I went to visit him on the last day for my last visit, when I walked in the room, she said, "Say goodbye to Paul, he's dying." She wouldn't look me in the eye, and he appeared to be dead already. I've seen dead people before. All of our relatives, all of Paul's relatives and all of my relatives in Greater Vancouver have died or moved away. But his eyes were wide open, his pupils were dilated and fixed. His hand was completely still and cold to the touch. So I believe that she ordered the doctor to kill him when she found out that she was being investigated by the RCMP. And it worked because I never heard from them again. So as I said, after Paul had died, they had me designated permanently a vexatious litigant at a hearing where my evidence was not produced to the judge as is required in Canadian courts. The person who is the applicant has to produce all their own documents and the documents of the other party, my evidence to the judge, but they didn't do that. So the judge only had the nun's documents, and of course she designated me permanently a vexatious litigant, and my application for permission to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada was dismissed. But while all of this was going on, and really since 2021, when I retired, I noticed that the Canadian government, or it became very apparent to me that euthanasia was going crazy, that from being an extraordinarily rare circumstance in cases of rare and dire cases, they were expanding it exponentially to include just about anybody with any kind of affliction or complaint, including any disability. And it's going to be expanded further again next year, where people with mental disorders are going to be killed by the state. So I've been posting little videos, and I've been under constant attack. YouTube vaporized my first channel. I lost every video I'd ever made, every video I had. They've allowed me to have a current channel, but it's shadow banned. My videos get like 5 views. LinkedIn has permanently terminated me. I can't have an account with LinkedIn or with X. But Facebook has, Mark Zuckerberg is my hero so far, because he's never shadow banned me, never put any limits on my ability to express my views about euthanasia in Canada. Start by never using the government's propaganda made-up word, MAiD. It sounds so nice, like the angel of death flying down and coming to gather you into her arms. It's medical assistance in dying. First of all, legal terms are very important, and the word medical is from the Greek verb to heal. And you can't call something any old thing, a medical procedure. And giving somebody a lethal injection does not heal them. My main argument against euthanasia in Canada is, number one, is no one can give informed consent to being killed because we don't know what death is. In my religion, I believe that when you die, if you have sinned and you're not repentant, you go to hell for eternity. If you have repented, then you go to heaven and you're with Jesus and God and your family. I believe in the Jewish faith there's no afterlife. Buddhists believe in reincarnation. And I believe in the Hindu faith there's reincarnation as well. And in Muslim faith, you go to heaven, and we've all heard about the 72 virgins. But in any event, we don't know what death is, so no doctor can get informed consent from anyone to be killed. Secondly, it's irreversible. So to err is human. Humans make mistakes. And in 1976, our elected Parliament of Canada abolished the ability of the government to kill Canadians. They abolished capital punishment, which was very common not so long ago. My grandfather, who was a lawyer, then a judge, had 2 of his clients were hanged, and it was devastating for him. So it's, number one, you can't give informed consent. Number 2, it's irreversible and it's been banned by the Canadian Parliament. And number 3, there's the logical fallacy of perfect implementation. So the way that the euthanasia came, the murder provisions of the criminal code were struck down to allow people to commit suicide was a decision by the Supreme Court of Canada in February of 2015, where they said that it wasn't fair to a woman who's long dead, Kay Carter, a woman who had a spinal condition. It was not fatal, called spinal stenosis. She wasn't comfortable, and she'd gone to Switzerland to be killed. But her relatives continued with the support of a non-governmental agency called Death with Dignity, one of those ghoulish death cults that love to kill people. So they promoted this person who was already dead to be killed to be able to be killed and not to have to commit suicide. And what Beverly McLaughlin, who was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada at that time, and the other Supreme Court judges anonymously and unanimously allowed suicide or assisted suicide, where somebody kills you. But they never said that doctors have to kill you or any of the nonsense that's been generated by the Canadian government. And since that time, Beverly McLaughlin went on to work for the Communist Party of China, Google it, for 6 years in Hong Kong as a Court of Appeal judge. And there is no euthanasia in China, although they do execute their religious political prisoners like the Falun Gong and harvest their organs for the Communist Party elite. And Canada has gone on to expand exponentially. It's turned our whole medical system, universal health care, on its head to turn doctors into murderers with no extrajudicially. So 800 years of jurisprudence in the common law, in the British Commonwealth, has been undermined, where only a judge and jury could decide for the state to execute anybody. And since February of 2015, Canada has executed extrajudicially by lethal injection 103,000 innocent, vulnerable Canadians with no legal oversight whatsoever. And I've been, because my background is, I was a psychologist for the government of British Columbia for several years, and I worked with people in a large institution, Woodlands in Westminster, and I saw how people who have nothing, the most vulnerable people in our society, are treated, and how they can be so easily stripped of all their rights. And I went to law school as the first single mother to graduate from law school in British Columbia history, and then I became a federal prosecutor. So I sent many people to prison for long periods of time. So I know what it feels like to take away somebody's freedom. And at that time, I could have applied to have people hung if the case was appropriate, because hanging was permissible in the military until 1999 in Canada. So I know what the weight of that responsibility feels like, but I always felt there were enough checks and balances in place that I was comfortable with it. But there are no checks and balances at all. The government is very anxious to kill as many people as it possibly can. There's been a systemic shift and drift in the goals of euthanasia in Canada, where, as I said, 45 people a day, 45 people were killed by the Canadian government today and will be killed every day until this stops. And it's all based on a faulty decision of the Supreme Court of Canada, which said that you have constitutional right to be killed, which is bizarre. It's a bizarre interpretation of the Canadian Charter, which is a document that was cooked up by Pierre Trudeau in 1982 and has completely overtaken judicial, created these judges who have ignored the will of the people in Parliament, and they've just taken over Canadian society, stripping people of land and in the decisions. It's just but this is the worst by far. It's bizarre, and I honestly believe that it was, and I think that it's up to Beverly McLaughlin, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada at the time, to refute that she was bribed or otherwise influenced by the Communist Party of China, for which she then became an employee for 6 years. And 103,000 innocent, vulnerable Canadians have been killed by our own institutions without the Communist Party of China having to fire a shot. So It's bad law. And there's a saying, the first thing I learned in law school, and you should take this away, well, the very first thing I learned was SEIS, sue everybody in sight. But the second thing that I learned in law school, and it's probably the most important lesson, is there's a saying, hard cases make bad law, which means that if there's a difficult case where you feel sorry for the person, you can't make law. The way law works in the Commonwealth countries is that it's based on what's called stare decisis, which means decided from the previous. So all decisions have to conform with previous decisions, like stairs. Stairs build on each other. And this decision for euthanasia is a rotten timber at the bottom of the stairs of Canadian justice. It's badly decided, it's wrongly decided. And upon it, 103,000 people have been pressured or been killed under circumstances that we're not even aware of, because the coroners have said that they have to put down on the death certificate the ailment that the person was suffering from, not the fact that they received a lethal injection. And the lethal injection itself is no fun. It's done exactly the same way that convicted murderers are killed in the United States. And by the way, last year, when Canada killed 17,772 human beings by lethal injection, in that time period, the United States of America, with a population roughly 10 times ours, killed by lethal injection 43 convicted murderers. So 17,772. So there has been systemic institutional drift in the objectives for euthanasia, as there always is, because we're human and people want to harvest. They want to access the wealth of boomers who are getting old. They don't want to pay for universal health care. But anyways, in this video, I wanted to, one thing, I try and touch upon one thing that struck me, and in this particular video, what I keep on thinking about is that little girl in the red coat in Schindler's List that's wandering through the movie, and in the end that she's killed. And if you want to know who is the little girl in the red coat, look at me. I've suffered from depression my whole life. I attempted suicide when I was 15 because I was a survivor of child sexual abuse. I've got lupus. I had a heart attack in 2016, from which I barely recovered. I had kidney failure after I received the COVID-19 shot, and I was given last rites by my priest. So I'm exactly the kind of person. I'm the little girl in the red coat. And you can't go back and rescue the little girl in the red coat from World War II, from Auschwitz, or Bergen-Belsen, or Buchenwald, or any one of the other hundreds of concentration and extermination camps. You can't go back and rescue those people. And the government, the system, will always choose a type of person that you will feel okay. You will accept their extermination. So in World War II, it was Jewish people and gypsies, gay people, Polish people, Russian prisoners of war. And for us, for Canadians, it was the Japanese who were interned and had their land stolen. But they will always pick a group of people that you think it's okay that they are disappeared. And in this case, Canada has, the 103,000 people that Canada has killed, 96% are white Canadian-born citizens. Little old ladies just like me. We're the little girls in the red coat. And you won't always get a chance to do the right thing. You won't be the person to provide shelter for Anne Frank, because you won't recognize authoritarian overreach when you see it. because they will always disguise it. So it's illegal. This extrajudicial execution by lethal injection in Canada, EBLIC. That's what it is. It's not MAiD, it's EBLIC. Extrajudicial execution by lethal injection in Canada. Anyways, that's it for today. I love you all. Take care.